The small Earth vessel approached the massive orbital station with careful, deliberate movements. Inside the control room, Commander Pete Wilson squinted at his monitors, his weathered face tense with concentration. This meeting would change everything. "They're still watching us," said Flight Officer Jack Reed, glancing at the external cameras that showed the sleek alien ships positioned around them. "I swear they're laughing at how slow we are." "Let them laugh," Pete replied, adjusting their course with a practiced hand. "We got here, didn't we?" Earth had been exploring space for nearly a century when they detected the first signals from the Stellar Coalition. Humans had established bases on Mars, mining operations on the Moon, and a handful of research stations scattered through the solar system. They had considered themselves advanced until they saw what real spacefaring civilizations could do. The Coalition ships had appeared suddenly near Jupiter 3 months ago. 5 vessels of impossible design that moved with a grace human ships couldn't match. Their message was simple: "We have been observing your development. We come to welcome you to the galactic community." What followed was 3 months of careful communication, translation efforts, and finally, this meeting at Earth's largest orbital platform. As the human ship docked, Coalition representatives watched from their own vessel. The alien beings looked remarkably humanoid, though their skin shimmered with faint blue patterns and their eyes were larger than human norm. "Look at that docking procedure," said Fleet Officer Nim, his voice translated through the communication system. "They use mechanical clamps and pressurized tubes. How inefficient." "Their vessels leak atmosphere constantly," added Science Director Loth, checking readings on her display. "It's remarkable they don't all suffocate." The Coalition delegation consisted of 5 species, each evolved on worlds far more hospitable than Earth. Their technology had developed in peaceful cooperation over thousands of years. They had never needed to adapt to harsh conditions. Their worlds were paradise planets with stable atmospheres, mild climate variations, and few natural disasters. When the human delegation entered the meeting chamber, the Coalition representatives tried to hide their surprise. Humans were smaller than expected, less impressive physically than their Coalition profiles suggested. "Welcome," said Ambassador Trell, the Coalition's chosen speaker. "We are pleased to finally meet face to face. Your journey to space has been interesting to observe." Commander Pete nodded politely, ignoring the condescension in the alien's tone. "Thank you for reaching out to us. Earth is honored to make contact with the Stellar Coalition." The meeting proceeded with formal introductions and diplomatic exchanges. The Coalition representatives explained their alliance of 57 species spread across 300 star systems. They described transportation networks, shared resources, and technological wonders beyond human imagination. "We offer Earth membership as a developing world," Ambassador Trell explained. "We can provide assistance with your primitive space technology, energy production, and environmental challenges." "That's very generous," said Dr. Lisa Moore, Earth's chief scientist. "We'd be particularly interested in your life support systems. Our own can be challenging in extreme environments." Something in her tone made Science Director Loth pause. "What environments do you typically operate in?" Before Lisa could answer, alarms blared throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red. "Station breach in Section 12, announced a computerized voice. "Atmosphere venting. Radiation levels rising." The Coalition representatives froze in panic. Section 12 was near the station's outer hull, where a small meteorite had struck, creating a breach that would expose the area to vacuum. "We must evacuate immediately," Ambassador Trell insisted, rising from his seat. But Commander Pete was already at a communication panel. "Section 12. That's where our maintenance team is working on the external sensors." "Working? But the hull is breached," Science Director Loth said, her translator struggling to convey her shock. Pete pressed a button on his wrist communicator. "Johnson, report. Are you and your team safe?" A casual voice crackled back. "We're fine, Commander. Minor breach, but we're patching it now. Should be fixed in 10 minutes. No need to interrupt your meeting. The coalition representatives stared at Pete in confusion. But how? Ambassador Trell asked. Your team is in vacuum conditions with radiation exposure. Commander Pete smiled slightly. They're wearing suits, Ambassador. That's what they're designed for. The meeting would continue, but something fundamental had changed. The coalition representatives exchanged uneasy glances. Perhaps humans weren't as primitive as they had assumed. 2 days after the first meeting, the coalition representatives requested a tour of the human space station. What had begun as a diplomatic courtesy quickly turned into something else entirely. This section operates at nearly 85 degrees Celsius, explained Dr. Lisa Moore as she led the visitors through the Thermal Regulation Center. The equipment generates extreme heat, but our cooling systems can only do so much. Ambassador Trell stopped abruptly, his translator device flickering as he spoke. You allow your people to work in such conditions. Our species begins to suffer cellular damage at just 60 degrees. We rotate staff every 4 hours, Lisa replied with a shrug. The suits handle the rest. The coalition delegation moved uncomfortably through the station, their environmental protection gear bulkier than they were accustomed to wearing. On their ships, environments were perfectly regulated. There was never any need for protective equipment inside their vessels. And this area? Asked Science Director Loth, pointing to a sealed doorway marked with warning symbols. High radiation processing, said Engineer Mike Thompson, who had joined the tour. We process certain materials that emit radiation levels about 200 times what's considered safe for human exposure. Fleet Officer Nim's large eyes widened further. You work with such materials inside your habitation structure. Space is limited, Mike replied simply. We build safety into our suits and protocols instead of trying to keep every hazard at a distance. As the tour continued, the coalition representatives grew increasingly unsettled. The human station was a patchwork of different environments, some areas with higher gravity, others with variable atmospheric pressure, several with temperature extremes that would kill most coalition species in minutes. At lunch in the station's common area, Ambassador Trell finally addressed what had been bothering him. Your species evolved on a single planet, correct? How did you develop such tolerance? Commander Pete smiled as he sipped his coffee. Earth isn't like your homeworlds. We have deserts where temperatures reach 50 degrees during the day and drop below freezing at night. We have oceans with crushing pressures, mountains with thin air, volcanic regions with toxic gases. But surely you evolved in just one of these environments, pressed Science Director Loth. We did, said Lisa, but humans have always been explorers. We built technologies to survive where we weren't meant to go. Our suits are just the latest version of something we've been developing for thousands of years. That afternoon, the coalition representatives witnessed a training exercise. 20 human crew members suited up to simulate a rescue in a decompressed section. The humans moved confidently in their equipment, handling tools and carrying out complex tasks, despite wearing what looked to the aliens like primitive protective gear. Those suits, Fleet Officer Nim said quietly to Ambassador Trell, they're nothing like our environmental protection systems. Indeed, Trell replied. Our systems are designed for brief emergency use. These humans wear theirs for extended operations. Later, in a private meeting room, the coalition representatives reviewed what they had learned. Their own species had evolved on planets with stable environments, developing technologies that worked within narrow parameters of temperature, pressure, and radiation. Their ships and stations maintained perfect conditions at all times. I believe we have miscalculated, Science Director Loth admitted. We assumed technological advancement meant eliminating environmental challenges. While humans, said Ambassador Trell, built their technology to embrace those challenges. The next morning, when the humans proposed a joint scientific mission to a nearby asteroid with extreme temperature variations, the coalition representatives hesitated. We may not be properly equipped for such conditions, Ambassador Trell admitted. Commander Pete nodded understandingly. No problem. Maybe you'd like to observe our team's methods first. We've been handling environments like that for decades. For the first time since contact, the coalition representatives looked at the humans not with amusement, but with growing respect. They had discovered the first area where humans might actually be more advanced, surviving where no one else could. 1 week into the diplomatic mission, Commander Pete received a formal communication from the Stellar Coalition High Council. He gathered his senior staff in the station's conference room to review it. "They're issuing us a challenge," Pete said, displaying the message on the main screen. "The Coalition wants to test our environmental capabilities in real conditions." Dr. Lisa scanned the details with narrowing eyes. "This isn't just a test, it's a trap." The challenge was deceptively simple. A coalition mining facility orbiting the gas giant HD 459 bits had suffered equipment failures. The repair would require working in an environment with extreme pressure fluctuations, toxic atmospheric gases, and radiation levels that would kill most known species in minutes. The coalition claimed none of their specialists could safely perform the repairs. "They don't think we can do it," said Engineer Mike, studying the technical specifications. "They've designed a scenario they believe is impossible for any life form to survive." "Can we do it?" Pete asked. Mike exchanged glances with the station's chief engineer, Robert Brown. "With our current suits? No, but the New Horizons suits that just came out of testing last month. Those might work." 2 days later, a small human vessel approached the damaged mining facility. Inside were 4 specialists, engineers Robert and Mike, plus 2 veteran space workers, Ben Wright and Ann Collins. They wore what the coalition representatives aboard the facility considered primitive environmental protection gear, bulky suits with mechanical joints and visible life support systems. Ambassador Trell greeted them in the docking bay, his own slim environmental suit gleaming with advanced technology. "We appreciate your willingness to attempt this repair, though we understand if you determine it's not possible." "We'll get it done," Robert said simply. "Just show us what needs fixing." Science Director Loth led them to a viewing window overlooking the damaged section. Outside, massive clouds of HD 459 bits swirled below, a toxic soup of chemicals under pressure that would crush standard equipment. Solar radiation bombarded the area at levels that would cause immediate cellular damage to unprotected organisms. "The primary harvester needs recalibration and its collection filters replaced," she explained. "The work requires precise adjustments that can't be performed by remote drones." "How long has this been broken?" asked Ben. 3 months, Ambassador Trell admitted. "We've been searching for a solution." Ann studied the readouts. "You're losing about 30% of your potential harvest with this offline, right?" "Correct," said Loth, surprised by the human's quick analysis. Robert nodded to his team. "Let's suit up properly." In the preparation room, the humans removed their standard spacesuits to reveal inner garments covered with monitoring equipment. The coalition representatives watched in fascination as they began assembling their specialized Horizon suits. "First layer is the cooling system," Mike explained as he worked. "Body temperature regulation is our biggest challenge in these conditions." The suits were assembled in sections. First, the core body piece with its primary life support, then the reinforced limbs with mechanical assist joints, followed by the specialized helmet systems with enhanced visual capabilities. "The outer shell," Robert continued, "uses a composite material that adapts to pressure changes. We developed it by studying deep-sea creatures on Earth." Ambassador Trell couldn't hide his surprise. "You based your space technology on ocean life." "Deepest parts of our oceans have more pressure than many planets," Ben said with a shrug. "Nature already solved these problems millions of years ago." When fully assembled, the suits looked impossibly heavy and cumbersome to the coalition representatives. Yet the humans moved with practiced ease, performing final checks on each other's equipment. "Duration expectancy?" Science Director Loth asked. 8 hours of primary life support," Ann replied. 4-hour backup system if anything fails. The suit can handle pressure variations of up to 500 atmospheres and radiation at 300 times the lethal human dose. Ambassador Trell stepped back. That's impossible. Not impossible, Robert said, his voice now coming through the suit's external speakers. Just difficult engineering. As the airlock cycled open and the team prepared to enter the hostile environment, Mike turned back to the stunned coalition representatives. "You might want to watch this," he said. "You're about to see what humans do best, surviving where we don't belong." The outer door opened, and without hesitation, the humans stepped into conditions that would kill any coalition species in seconds. The real challenge had begun. The observation room fell silent as the coalition representatives watched the 4 humans work on the damaged harvesting equipment. 3 hours had passed since they stepped into the lethal environment, and not one had returned for a break or replacement. Their vital signs remained stable, reported Medical Officer Pax, his long fingers manipulating the monitoring screen with nervous precision. Body temperature, blood oxygen, neural activity, all within their normal ranges. Ambassador Trell paced the length of the window. Outside, Engineer Robert was dismantling a complex filter system while toxic gases swirled around him. When a sudden pressure spike hit the area, the suit merely adjusted, panels shifting, seals compressing, without Robert even pausing his work. "I want to understand how those suits function," Science Director Loft said. "They appear crude, yet they're performing beyond our most advanced environmental systems." Through the communication channel, they could hear the humans talking as they worked. "Anne, I need the molecular spanner," Mike said, his voice calm despite floating in an atmosphere that would dissolve coalition lungs in seconds. "Radiation's picking up on the port side," Ben noted casually. "Suit's compensating, but we should try to finish in the next 2 hours." Ambassador Trell exchanged glances with Science Director Loft. The humans were discussing deadly conditions as if commenting on mild weather. 5 hours into the operation, the humans completed the repairs. As they returned through the airlock, the coalition representatives gathered anxiously. The decontamination process took nearly 30 minutes, another surprise for the aliens, who were accustomed to much quicker procedures. When the inner door finally opened, the humans emerged from their suits with methodical care. Each component was removed in sequence, inspected, and placed on specialized racks. The outer layers showed visible damage, scorching from radiation, chemical etching from the toxic atmosphere, stress marks from pressure changes. "You actually did it," Ambassador Trell said, unable to hide his amazement. Robert wiped sweat from his forehead. "The harvester should be back to full efficiency now. We replaced all the filters and recalibrated the intake system." Science Director Loft stepped forward. May we examine your suits? Our scientists have never seen anything like them." Mike shrugged. "Sure. They need maintenance anyway." The next day, coalition engineers and scientists crowded the technical lab, where the humans had laid out one of the Horizon suits for inspection. Robert and Mike stood by, answering questions as the aliens examined each component. "This outer layer," said Chief Engineer Kren of the Coalition, running a scanner over the material. "It contains microscopic mechanical structures. Active nanomaterials," Mike confirmed. "They respond to pressure changes by rearranging their molecular structure. Think of them as billions of tiny machines working together." Science Director Loft pointed to the helmet. "And this visual system, it appears to use multiple overlapping technologies. 6 different visual spectrums," Robert explained. "Visible light is just one small part of what the suit can see. We also have thermal, radiation mapping, molecular composition scanning, electromagnetic field detection, and ultraviolet." Ambassador Trell lifted a heavy glove section. "The joints seem primitive, mechanical rather than our fluid dynamic systems." Mike smiled slightly. "Mechanical systems don't fail when exposed to unexpected radiation or chemical contamination. They might be heavier, but they're nearly impossible to disable completely. Redundancy is our philosophy," Robert added. Every critical system has two backups, each using different operating principles. If one fails, another takes over. Chief Engineer Kren shook his head in disbelief. This contradicts everything we believe about advanced technology. Our approach has always been to create perfect, elegant systems that require ideal conditions. Earth doesn't have ideal conditions, Mike said simply. Never has. We build for the worst case, not the best case. As the examination continued, Ambassador Trell pulled Commander Pete aside. Why were we not aware of this technology? Our assessment of human capabilities didn't indicate such advanced environmental engineering. Pete's expression remained neutral. You evaluated our ships, our energy systems, our computers. You never asked about our suits. Because environmental protection is a basic technology, Ambassador Trell said. Every species develops it early in their evolution. Yes, Pete agreed. But not every species had to become masters of it to survive. Your worlds were paradise planets. Earth has deserts, oceans, Arctic regions, and volcanoes. We've been building suits to survive hostile environments since before we discovered electricity. For the first time, Ambassador Trell looked at the humans with something approaching respect. The Coalition had been wrong in their assessment. Humans weren't primitive at all. They were just specialized in a way the Coalition had never considered important. The emergency alert came at 3:27 Earth Standard Time, blaring through the human station with a harsh electronic wail. Commander Pete jolted awake, reaching for his communication panel before his eyes were fully open. Wilson here. What's happening? Sir, came the urgent voice of the night shift officer. We're receiving distress signals from the Coalition Research Outpost in the Cygnus sector. Major system failure. They're requesting immediate assistance. 10 minutes later, Pete stood in the command center surrounded by his senior staff, all hastily dressed and focused on the holographic display showing the Coalition outpost. The elegant structure was normally a gleaming silver against the black of space, but now emergency lights flashed across its surface. Their primary environmental systems have failed, reported Dr. Lisa, reviewing the incoming data. Backup systems are failing too. They've got over 300 researchers from 17 species aboard. Engineer Mike studied the technical readouts with a grim expression. Looks like cascading failures. Their central chamber is maintaining habitable conditions, but the outer sections are already experiencing rapid temperature changes, pressure fluctuations, and radiation spikes. How many Coalition ships are in range? Pete asked. 3, answered Flight Officer Jack. But they're reporting they can only evacuate about 40% of the personnel before conditions become unsurvivable. Pete made his decision immediately. Prep our rescue shuttles, all available Horizon suits and emergency response teams. Sir, Mike interjected, most of our Horizon suits are still in maintenance after the mining station mission. How many are operational? 8 complete suits. Maybe 4 more if we cobble together parts. Pete nodded. That's enough. Alert our rescue specialists. 6 hours later, 3 human vessels approached the deteriorating Coalition outpost. Inside the lead shuttle, Ben Wright checked his Horizon suit one final time, surrounded by 7 other rescue specialists in similar gear. Remember, he told his team, most of these species have never experienced environmental extremes. They'll be in shock. Some may be physically incapacitated by conditions we consider merely uncomfortable. The shuttle docked at an emergency airlock, the connection systems struggling to maintain a seal against the outpost's failing pressure regulation. As the doors opened, a wave of scorching heat hit the human team. The outpost's interior was bathed in red emergency lighting, and the air shimmered with rising temperature. Coalition Medical Officer Pax stumbled toward them, his slim environmental suit already showing signs of failure. You came, he gasped, his translator barely functioning. But you cannot survive here. The radiation levels in Section 3 are already. We'll handle it. Ben interrupted, his voice calm through his suit's speakers. How many people in the affected areas? 142. Pax replied. But most outer sections are now at temperatures above 70 degrees with radiation levels that will cause immediate cellular damage. No one can reach them. Ben turned to his team. Alpha Team, take North Quadrant. Beta Teams, South. I'll coordinate from Central Junction. Without hesitation, the humans moved into areas that the Coalition had declared unsurvivable. Their bulky suits, which had once been objects of Coalition amusement, now moved with purpose through corridors where the atmosphere was turning toxic. In Section 3, Rescue Specialist Maria found a group of Coalition scientists huddled in a sealed lab. Their personal protection equipment was failing, their skin showing early signs of radiation burns. When Maria forced the door open, they stared at her in disbelief. "Come with me," she said, her voice steady. "We have a shuttle docked at Junction 7. But the corridor is exposed to vacuum," one scientist protested weakly. Maria shook her head. "Not completely. It's low pressure, high radiation, and about -40 degrees now. My suit handles worse conditions every day during training." Across the station, similar scenes played out. Human rescuers moved through environments that would kill unprotected Coalition species in seconds, carrying injured aliens when necessary, guiding others through failing sections. In the central command room, Coalition Administrator Vren watched in stunned silence as humans in their primitive suits saved his people one by one. "They're walking through death," he whispered to Ambassador Trell, who had arrived on the first Coalition rescue vessel. "No," Trell corrected, a new understanding in his voice. "They're walking through conditions they designed for. This is what humans do." After 14 hours of continuous rescue operations, the final count was complete. All 327 Coalition personnel had been evacuated. Not a single life was lost, and not a single human had complained about the conditions. The grand meeting hall of the Stellar Coalition headquarters buzzed with activity. Representatives from 47 species filled the tiered seating, their voices creating a symphony of different tones and rhythms as translation devices worked to bridge the gaps between languages. At the center of the chamber stood a simple podium where Commander Pete Wilson waited patiently. 2 weeks had passed since the rescue of the Cygnus research outpost. The story had spread rapidly through Coalition space, humans in their bulky suits walking through environments that would kill most species instantly, carrying injured researchers to safety when their own advanced environmental systems had failed. High Chancellor Mord, the senior-most leader of the Coalition, raised a four-fingered hand for silence. The chamber quieted immediately. "Commander Wilson," the Chancellor began, "the Council has reviewed the events at Cygnus, along with the earlier repair operation at the HD 459 bits mining facility. We find ourselves reconsidering our initial assessment of human capabilities." Pete nodded politely. "We appreciate the opportunity to demonstrate our skills. The Council formally requests access to human environmental suit technology," Chancellor Mord continued. "We offer trade agreements, scientific exchange, and technology sharing in return." A murmur rippled through the assembled representatives. Such a direct request from the Council was unprecedented, especially to a species they had initially classified as developing. Pete stepped to the podium. Behind him, the Earth delegation sat calmly, including Dr. Lisa Moore and Engineer Robert Brown. "Earth is willing to share our environmental protection technology," Pete said. "But we wish to join the Stellar Coalition as equal partners, not as a developing world requiring assistance." Chancellor Mord's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of surprise among his species. "Your faster-than-light capability is rudimentary. Your energy production systems are inefficient. Your computational technology is several generations behind Coalition standard." "True," Pete acknowledged, "but we offer something equally valuable: the ability to work in environments no Coalition species can currently access. 1/3 of your mining operations are running below capacity because they exist in environments too harsh for your workers. We can help." The Council members conferred briefly, their private channel excluding the Earth representatives. When they finished, Chancellor Mord spoke again. "We accept these terms. Earth will join the Stellar Coalition as a full member, with specialization in extreme environment operations." 3 days later, the first joint technology team assembled in the main laboratory of the human station. Coalition engineers and scientists worked alongside their human counterparts, examining the Horizon suits in complete detail. "The principle seems simple," said Chief Engineer Kren, studying holographic diagrams of the suit layers. "But implementing it for our physiologies presents challenges. Many coalition species cannot tolerate the weight of mechanical systems." Robert nodded. "We'll need to adapt the designs for each species. Some might use lighter materials or different support structures." Science Director Loft pointed to the life support modules. "Your oxygen recycling system is surprisingly efficient despite its size. Our miniaturized systems achieve only 60% of this effectiveness." "Size isn't always the enemy," Dr. Lisa explained. "Sometimes bigger systems allow for redundancy and robustness." As they worked, Ambassador Trell observed the collaboration from a distance. Beside him stood Commander Pete, both watching as humans explained suit technologies, while Coalition representatives shared their own advanced knowledge of material science and energy distribution. "Your people don't hesitate to share your techniques," Trell noted. "Many species guard their technological advantages carefully." Pete shrugged. "Earth has always faced challenges too big for any single nation to solve alone. We learned long ago that sharing knowledge benefits everyone. A lesson some in the Coalition have forgotten," Trell admitted. "Our 1,000 years of technological dominance bred complacency." By evening, the first prototype adaptations were already taking shape. Coalition material science combined with human environmental engineering principles. A suit designed for Ambassador Trell's species incorporated their advanced neural interfaces while maintaining the robust mechanical backup systems that humans relied on. "It's heavier than I'm accustomed to," Trell said, trying on a gauntlet section. "But it will keep you alive in conditions that would kill you otherwise," Robert pointed out. "Sometimes a little extra weight is worth carrying." As the joint team continued working late into the night, the conversation shifted from technical details to philosophical differences. Coalition engineers explained their focus on elegance and efficiency, while humans described their emphasis on redundancy and worst-case planning. "We build for perfect conditions," Chief Engineer Kren acknowledged. "You build for disaster." "Because on Earth," Robert replied, "disasters always come eventually. We'd rather be prepared than elegant." By morning, something new was emerging, not just adapted suit designs, but a hybrid approach to technology itself. 1 year after the Cygnus rescue operation, the exploratory vessel Horizon cut silently through the atmosphere of Titan IX, a volcanic moon orbiting a gas giant in the Cassiopeia sector. Its sleek hull combined Coalition design principles with human durability, creating something neither civilization would have built alone. On the command deck, Commander Pete Wilson stood beside Ambassador Trell, both watching the external feeds as the ship descended through clouds of sulfuric acid and methane. "Surface temperature reading 347 degrees Celsius, reported Flight Officer Jack. "Atmospheric pressure at 89 times Earth standard. Radiation levels well within our safety margins. A year ago, we wouldn't have considered this moon approachable," Trell said quietly. "Now we're landing on it." Pete nodded. "Amazing what we can achieve when we combine our strengths." The bridge crew was evenly split between humans and Coalition species, each wearing environmental suits that represented the culmination of their year-long technology exchange. The Coalition members wore suits visibly inspired by human designs, bulkier than their previous models, with mechanical backup systems and redundant life support. The humans wore suits enhanced with Coalition material science, lighter, more flexible, but no less durable. "Landing sequence initiating," Jack announced. "All teams prepare for surface operations." In the equipment bay, Robert and Chief Engineer Kren supervised the final preparations of the exploration team. 6 beings, 3 human, 3 Coalition, checked each other's suits with practiced efficiency. Remember, Robert told the team, this environment is hostile to all known life forms. Nobody gets careless. Nobody takes shortcuts. The coalition members nodded with newfound respect. Their initial amusement at human caution had long since transformed into appreciation. When the ship touched down on Titan IX's surface, the external cameras showed a hellish landscape. Rivers of molten rock flowed between black stone formations. The sky burned orange with chemical interactions, and lightning struck continuously in the distance. First team, you are clear for deployment. Commander Pete authorized from the bridge. The airlock cycled open, and the 6 explorers stepped onto a world that would have killed them instantly a year earlier. Their suits, the physical embodiment of their shared knowledge, protected them from conditions that once seemed impossible to survive. Beginning geological survey, reported Ann Collins, her voice calm as she activated scanning equipment. These formations contain concentrations of rare elements we've never seen before. Beside her, coalition scientist Prell collected atmospheric samples. The chemical combinations here could revolutionize our understanding of planetary formation. Back on the ship, Ambassador Trell turned to Pete. The Coalition Council has approved 10 more joint missions to similar environments, worlds we've observed for centuries but never dared to touch. And Earth has approved the construction of 3 deep space stations using Coalition specifications, Pete replied, with environmental systems designed by our joint teams. On Titan IX's surface, the exploration team moved confidently across terrain no intelligent being had ever walked before. Their suits, no longer objects of ridicule but symbols of innovation, handled the extreme conditions automatically, leaving the explorers free to focus on discovery. It's strange, said coalition biologist Nim, carefully collecting mineral samples near a geothermal vent. A year ago, my species considered humans technologically backward. And we thought you were impractical perfectionists, Anne replied with a smile visible through her helmet. Turns out we were both right, and both wrong. 6 hours later, the exploration team returned to the ship with unprecedented data and samples. As the vessel lifted off from Titan IX, heading toward its next destination, Commander Pete reviewed the preliminary findings with growing excitement. These discoveries will change both our civilizations, Ambassador Trell observed. Access to these environments opens possibilities we never imagined. That's always been the human way, Pete said. Solve the survival problem first, then look around to see what you can learn. In the years since Earth had joined the Coalition, 17 new joint missions had explored environments previously considered too hostile for intelligent life. Coalition engineers had incorporated human environmental principles into their ship designs, while humans had adopted coalition efficiency in their space travel technology. The Coalition had stopped laughing at humans and their primitive suits. Instead, they now sought human expertise for their most challenging missions. The species that had evolved on the harsh, unpredictable world called Earth had brought something unique to galactic civilization: the stubborn refusal to accept that any environment was too hostile to explore. As the horizon accelerated toward its next destination, Ambassador Trell watched the human crew members working alongside his people. You know, he said to Pete, some of our oldest texts speak of beings who could walk through fire and swim through poison. We thought they were myths. Pete smiled. Sometimes myths just need the right technology to become reality.